I swear, if that smug bastard had said one more word, I would have rearranged his jaw into modern art. We were at dinner, her idea, not mine. Ashley had called it a serious talk, which in hindsight should have been a red flag the size of a football field. I showed up thinking maybe she wanted to work on us. Instead, I walked into a trap dressed in candlelight and Cabernet. And there he was, Chase Donovan, her colleague. I'd heard his name more than I cared to, always followed by "he just gets me." He sat at the table in a tight black shirt, smirking like he owned the lease on her happiness. Ashley sat right next to him, her hand way too close to his thigh, laughing too loud at jokes that weren't even funny. "Logan," she said sweetly, motioning to the chair across from them. "This is Chase. You've heard me mention him from work." Yeah, I'd heard. Too often. I sat down, forcing a smile. My fists were already balled under the table. Then Chase leaned forward, eyes locked on mine, and said, calm as a surgeon, "I'll make this simple. You've got two options. Leave quietly, or face me like a man." Ashley didn't flinch. She smiled. The words bounced around my head like a bullet in a steel drum. Leave quietly. He thought I'd crawl out of my own life like a beaten dog. That I'd just nod, walk away, and let him play house with my wife. I smiled back. Not because I found it funny, but because nothing rattles a man like silence he doesn't understand. Then I said, "You want your teeth whole, or in pieces?" His smirk faltered. Ashley gasped like I'd broken etiquette. But I didn't move. I didn't give them the scene they wanted. I just sat there, calm, controlled, watching Chase realize he'd picked a fight with the wrong placeholder. That night, when I walked into our house, it didn't feel like home anymore. The air was wrong. The walls too quiet. Her perfume lingered, but not just hers. A different scent too, something musky, arrogant. That's when I knew this wasn't the beginning of an affair. It was the finale. Curtain call. They'd been running the show for months, and I'd just walked into the last act. But if she thought I was going to bow out quietly, she didn't know me at all. The morning after that little dinner ambush, Ashley strolled into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Hair tied up, scrolling through her phone, sipping coffee. She didn't even look at me. "What?" she finally asked, noticing my stare. I didn't answer. I just slid her tablet across the table. Open. On her messages with Chase. The selfies. The videos. The late-night voice notes where he called her my little secret, and she giggled like a teenager sneaking out of the house. Her hand froze mid-scroll. She stared at the screen, then slowly looked up at me. "Why were you snooping through my stuff?" That was it. Not an apology. Not even denial. Just deflection. I leaned forward, calm as ever. "You lied to me. You gaslit me. You humiliated me in public. And you thought I wouldn't notice?" She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh my God, Logan. Stop being so dramatic. We've been over for months. You're just too stubborn to admit it." Over for months? Interesting. That explained the new lingerie tags I found stuffed in her purse, the sudden late meetings, the perfume she never wore for me. I let her talk, though, because the more rope you give a liar, the better the noose fits. "You think I don't know about last weekend?" I asked. Her lips parted, just barely. "Caught. What weekend?" "Sacramento. The baby shower. Or should I say, hotel room at the Marriott, Chase brushing his teeth in the background." She flinched, then plastered on that smug smile again. "So what, Logan? You're boring. Predictable. I needed a man who made me feel alive again." Alive. She actually said that, as if adultery was some kind of vitamin deficiency. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw things. I just sat back in my chair and smiled. Perfect. Because boring, predictable men like me, we plan, we prepare, and we always stay one step ahead. She tilted her head, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" I stood, grabbed my jacket, and looked her dead in the eye. "It means you should probably check the bank account before you order brunch today." Her face changed then. The color drained just enough for me to notice. Because she didn't know I'd been watching, tracking, documenting. Every transaction. Every hotel receipt. Every work trip. I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was her historian. And historians don't write fairy tales. They write facts. By lunchtime that same day, Ashley called me 5 times. I didn't pick up once. I knew what those calls were. Panic disguised as concern. So instead, I walked into the bank. Calm. Steady. Like a man on a lunch break. "Morning, Mr. Hale," the teller said, smiling politely. She knew me. I'd been depositing into the same joint account for 15 years. But today wasn't about depositing. Today was about extraction. I need to move funds, I said. Personal accounts only. She blinked, glanced at her screen. Joint account too? I shook my head. No, that one stays frozen. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Frozen? That's right. No more access. Not until I say otherwise. She nodded carefully. Papers slid across the desk. I signed them without a tremor in my hand. Because while Ashley was out playing house with her protein powder boyfriend, I'd been moving quietly, setting up safeguards. Call it intuition, call it foresight, but I never trusted the sudden spike in her yoga retreats. By the time I walked out of that bank, Ashley's spending power had been clipped at the knees. Sure enough, my phone buzzed the moment she tried to order something. Her voice came through the voicemail, high and sharp. Logan, what the hell did you do? My card's not working. You can't just cut me off. That's financial abuse. I almost laughed out loud in the parking lot. Financial abuse. The woman who siphoned gas money from my account for hotel trysts was suddenly worried about fairness. That evening, when I got home, she was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes blazing. You think you can just control me with money? No, I said, calmly hanging up my jacket. I think I can stop funding my own humiliation. Her jaw dropped, but she recovered quick. She always did. I'll get a lawyer, she snapped. Good, I replied. So will I. Difference is, I've already got mine on retainer. Yours will need a down payment. That one landed. She tried to glare, but the cracks were showing. Then I leaned against the counter, looked her dead in the eyes, and said softly, You always called me boring, Ashley. But boring men, they save. They prepare. They document. And when the storm hits, they don't sink, they watch. She stormed out, slamming the door. I just smiled. Because every move she thought was bold was just another piece sliding exactly where I wanted it. When you've been married long enough, you learn the rhythm of your wife's temper tantrums. Ashley's usually followed a three-step process. First, the icy silence, then the explosion. Finally, the fake sweetness meant to reel me back in. It was a tired performance I'd watched too many times, and frankly, I was ready for the finale. The day after I froze her out financially, she went straight to stage 2. I came home from work to find her waiting in the living room, arms folded, tapping her foot against the hardwood like a metronome of fury. Chase wasn't there, thank God, or I might have had to redecorate the place with his smug grin, but his presence hung in the air all the same. You're not going to win, she snapped before I even set my keys down. Win what? I asked, loosening my tie. This little control game you're playing. Cutting off cards, freezing accounts, acting like you're some puppet master. You can't just keep me hostage. I smiled faintly. Funny, I thought you were keeping me hostage all these years. Hostage to lies. To work dinners that somehow ended in hotel suites. To yoga retreats with no receipts. Her eyes narrowed, but I kept going. Calm. Deliberate. I'm not controlling you, Ashley. I'm just refusing to bankroll your performance anymore. If Chase wants to play house with you, he can pay the utilities. He can buy your designer shoes. Let's see how long his protein powder salary lasts. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For once, I'd cut through the rehearsed monologue. Then she tried a different angle. Her voice softened, lips curling into something like a smile. Logan, you don't have to do this. We can work it out. Maybe I overstepped. Maybe I just needed. I laughed. Not cruelly, not loudly. Just a quiet, sharp laugh that made her flinch. Ashley, you had me sit across from him at dinner. You let him give me ultimatums like he was negotiating a merger. You called me boring while he was brushing his teeth in your hotel room. Do you really think there's a we left? The fake sweetness drained from her face. Back to cold steel. You're going to regret this, she hissed. Maybe, I said, shrugging. But I promise you, you'll regret it first. And with that, I walked upstairs, leaving her to stew. The next week was entertaining. See, people like Ashley build their identities on appearances. Instagram photos, office gossip, dinner parties with friends who secretly loathed her but loved her wine cabinet. She lived for the illusion of being admired, which meant my next move was devastating in its simplicity. I sent a single email. One screenshot. Chase's shirtless hotel selfie, timestamped during one of Ashley's so-called team-building weekends. I didn't blast it everywhere. Oh no. Precision matters. I sent it only to 3 people. Her boss, her best friend, and her mother. By Monday morning, the fallout had begun. Her boss called me first, his voice tight. Logan, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry you're going through this. We'll handle it internally. Translation, she'd be out of the company before the quarter was over. Her best friend texted me one line, "You deserve better." That one surprised me. Maybe she'd seen this circus coming all along. Her mother called me last. Sweet old Martha, who once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her daughter. She didn't even sound angry, just tired. Logan, she sighed. I always worried she'd ruin a good thing. But I didn't think she'd do it like this. 3 arrows. 3 direct hits. Ashley came home that evening with the look of a general whose army had deserted. She slammed her purse on the counter, spun on me like a storm. You went behind my back? I tilted my head. Behind your back? Isn't that your specialty? Her face turned crimson. You had no right. I had every right. I cut in. My voice wasn't loud, but it was final. You didn't just cheat on me, Ashley. You tried to humiliate me. You tried to make me the fool in my own life. And now you're upset that the spotlight's turned on you. She stood there, breathing hard, searching for a comeback. Nothing came. So she stormed upstairs, the slam of the bedroom door echoing through the house. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Because the best revenge isn't fire. It's cold air. It's precision. The funny thing about betrayal is how quickly the betrayer unravels once the lies collapse. Within days, Ashley's world was crumbling. Her boss suspended her. Her best friend stopped answering calls. Even her mother kept forgetting to return messages. Meanwhile, I went about my life. Work, gym, dinner at my brother's place. Normalcy, stability, all the boring, predictable things she despised. But Ashley? She was drowning. I could see it in the way she clung to her phone, the way her hands shook when Chase didn't answer fast enough. Turns out, her night in a tight black shirt wasn't as dependable as she thought. One night, I caught her on the porch, phone pressed to her ear. Chase, please, just call me back. We can fix this. You don't understand. Logan's being impossible. I need you. Her voice cracked. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She turned, saw me standing in the doorway, and froze. For a second, I thought she might try to defend herself, spin another excuse. But she didn't. She just shut the phone off, brushed past me, and muttered, "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because she was right. The final straw came on a Wednesday morning. She tried to buy groceries with her personal card. Declined. Tried the joint. Frozen. Came home with empty hands and a face full of rage. "You can't do this forever," she shouted, slamming a cupboard door. I set down my coffee. Ashley, I don't need to do it forever. Just long enough for you to realize you've got nothing without me. Not the money. Not the friends. Not the reputation. Not even Chase. You burned every bridge you had, and now you're standing in the ashes. She glared at me, chest heaving. You think you've won? You haven't. I'll find a way. I leaned back, calm as stone. Find one fast. Because court's in 2 weeks. And I'm walking in with more than enough evidence to make sure you don't see a dime of spousal support. Her jaw clenched. She didn't argue. She just stormed upstairs, again, the sound of her footsteps more desperate than angry this time. I sipped my coffee and smiled. Because this wasn't the end. Not even close. This was just the setup. And the best part? She still had no idea what I had planned for the grand finale that you'd think by now she'd have figured it out. That she'd realize every move I made was deliberate, every silence calculated. But Ashley was too busy scrambling, like a gambler doubling down after every loss, blind to the fact that the house always wins. The night before our first court date, she tried one last trick. She sat at the kitchen table, all dressed up like we were about to go out for a date, candle flickering between us. Lipstick, perfume, the works. For a split second, it almost felt like the old days, before Chase, before the smirks, before the public humiliation. But then she spoke. "Logan, we don't have to do this. We could just call it even. No lawyers, no court. Start fresh." I studied her face. She was good at it, I'll give her that. The doe eyes, the soft voice, the little tremor like she was about to cry. If I were the man she thought I still was, maybe I'd have cracked. But the difference was, I wasn't that man anymore. "Ashley," I said slowly, "you're not offering peace. You're bargaining from desperation. There's a difference." Her lips tightened. "So you won't even consider it?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Let me ask you something. When you and Chase set up that little dinner stunt, did you consider me? When you laughed at his jokes and looked me in the eye while his hand was on your thigh, did you consider me? When you called me boring to him, when you whispered that I was just a placeholder, did you consider me? Her eyes darted away. Silence. That's what I thought, I said, standing. Court at 9. We're something professional. The next morning, she strutted into the courthouse like it was a runway show. Chase wasn't with her, but I could tell she'd been on the phone with him. Same fake confidence, same bounce in her step. She thought she'd charm the judge, maybe cry a little, maybe paint me as controlling. She had no idea what was about to hit her. My lawyer, Marcus, was already waiting for me inside. Solid guy, mid-50s, blunt, the kind who didn't waste words. He clapped me on the shoulder. "You've got everything?" he asked. "More than enough," I said, sliding the folder across. When the session started, Ashley launched into her routine, painted herself as the victim, claimed I was financially abusive, said she was cut off from everything she needed to survive. Theatrical tears, trembling voice. A performance, really. The judge nodded politely, scribbling notes. Then it was our turn. Marcus stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit evidence contradicting the petitioner's claims." He opened the folder. Emails, texts, photos, bank records, the hotel receipts, the Instagram messages Chase bragged about to her friends. Even a couple of voice notes she hadn't realized were backed up to our family cloud account. Her own words, giggling about how easy it was to keep me in the dark. Every page was a nail in the coffin. Ashley sat frozen, her face draining of color with each new exhibit. At one point, she whispered, "Logan, please," under her breath, but I didn't flinch. By the time Marcus finished, the courtroom was silent. The judge adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and said flatly, "Given the evidence, I see no grounds for spousal support. In fact, Mr. Hale, I commend your restraint." Bang. Just like that. Ashley's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Chase couldn't save her. Her friends couldn't spin it. Her boss couldn't cover it up. It was over. Afterward, I walked out of the courthouse into the bright morning sun. Marcus shook my hand. "You handled that well. Most men crack under this kind of betrayal. You? You stayed cold." I smiled faintly. "Cold doesn't burn out." He nodded once, then left. Ashley followed me outside, heels clacking against the stone. "Logan, wait," she called. I turned. She was a mess now. Makeup streaked, hair disheveled, desperation written all over her face. "You didn't have to destroy me," she said. "You could have just left." I stared at her. "Ashley, you destroyed yourself. I just turned the lights on so everyone could see it." She tried to step closer, but I raised a hand. "Don't. You made your choice. Now live with it." And then I walked away, leaving her standing there on the courthouse steps, small for the first time in her life. But my revenge wasn't over. Not yet. See, Ashley always thrived on image. The glamorous life. The carefully curated illusion. And even after losing in court, I knew she'd try to rebuild it. Chase might still play along for a while, maybe even move in. She'd smile for Instagram, post quotes about resilience, pretend she was thriving. So I had one last card to play. A few nights later, I sat at my desk with my laptop. The folder was already organized. Ashley _unmasked. Everything I'd gathered, the messages, the receipts, the selfies, the emails. Nothing explicit, nothing crude. Just the truth, neatly arranged. And then, with one click, I sent it anonymously to the people who mattered most in her little world. Her office board, her church group, her Pilates circle. Not a rant, not revenge porn. Just facts. Cold, undeniable facts. By morning, her phone was exploding. I know because I heard it through the walls. The frantic pacing, the slammed doors, the shouted phone calls. I didn't need to listen to the words. I could hear the collapse in her tone. By the end of the week, Chase was gone. Her job was gone. Her friends, gone. And me? I was still standing. Steady. Unshaken. The last time I saw her, she was pulling out of the driveway with what little she had left stuffed in the back of her SUV. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Pride wouldn't let her. But me? I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching calmly. 15 years of my life, reduced to a moving truck of clothes and makeup. 15 years of lies, folded into cardboard boxes. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt clean. My neighbor, old Mr. Walker, waved from across the street. "Everything all right, Logan?" I smiled. Better than all right. Because revenge isn't rage. Rage burns hot and dies quick. Revenge is patience. It's precision. It's watching the storm destroy everything around her while you stand dry under the roof you built with your own two hands. And as her SUV disappeared down the road, I finally took a deep breath. Not bitter. Not broken. Just free. The house was quiet again. Too quiet, really. After she left, I thought I'd missed the noise, the constant buzz of her phone, the sharp clack of her heels on hardwood, even the sighs she'd make when I dared to interrupt her scrolling. But silence has a way of teaching you things. You learn that peace isn't emptiness. It's freedom. For 2 weeks, I lived like a man rediscovering oxygen. Work, gym, dinners with family, sleep. Simple. Predictable. The same words she once used as weapons now felt like blessings. Boring, she had called me. Predictable. Yet boring men keep roofs over heads. Predictable men build lives that last. And the women who scoff at that? They're the ones who end up packing their illusions into cardboard boxes. But Ashley wasn't the type to fade quietly. Oh no, she was a creature of spotlight. Even as her reputation collapsed, I knew she'd try to crawl back into the limelight. And sure enough, it didn't take long. One Sunday morning, my sister slid her phone across the breakfast table. "You seen this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. It was Ashley's Instagram. A brand new post. She was sitting on a balcony somewhere. Sunglasses on, wine glass in hand, with a caption that read, "Resilient women don't break. They rebuild. Watch me." Hashtags like hashtag new chapter, hashtag independent woman, and, my personal favorite, hashtag unbothered. I almost choked on my coffee. Independent, I muttered. Funny word for someone living off hotel points and Chase's credit card. My sister smirked. "She's already trying to spin it." "Let her spin," I said. Wheels don't mean much when the engine's dead. But I didn't scroll past. No, I studied it. Because posts like that aren't for strangers. They're signals. Warnings. Theatrics for an audience of one. She wanted me to see it. 2 nights later, the signal got louder. My phone buzzed at 11:42 p.m. unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Logan. Her voice. Too soft. Too careful. I didn't respond. Just breathed. "Look, I just wanted to talk. Not fight. Just talk." Still, I said nothing. "Chase, he's busy with work. And, well, I thought maybe we could meet. For coffee? Just two. I don't know. Clear the air." There it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just desperation wrapped in civility. Finally, I spoke. "Ashley, there's nothing left to clear. You made your choice." I just turned the lights on. Silence on her end. Then a sniffle. "You don't have to hate me, Logan." "I don't," I said flatly. "Hate takes energy. And I've wasted enough on you." I hung up. Blocked the number. But Ashley wasn't done. If she couldn't win me back, she'd try to win the crowd again. She started showing up places she knew I'd be. Our old grocery store, the gym, even the church she'd only attended for Easter photos. Each time, she looked carefully disheveled, like some tragic heroine from a daytime drama. Each time, she made sure to be within eyesight, not daring to approach, but always letting me notice. My buddy, Chris, caught on quick. "She's staging sightings," he muttered one night at the bar. "Staging what?" I asked. He sipped his beer. "It's like when celebrities call the paparazzi on themselves. She wants you to see her suffering. Wants you to feel guilty. Wants everyone else to think she's the abandoned victim." I chuckled. Then she miscast the role. Victims don't send shirtless hotel selfies. But deep down, I knew Chris was right. Ashley wasn't rebuilding. She was rebranding. And that's when I realized my next move. See, Ashley thought she was playing me. Thought she was tugging at guilt, pulling on some leftover thread of love. But guilt isn't my currency. Facts are. And I had more than enough in my possession to bankrupt her theatrics. So I started small. A quiet whisper here. A subtle reveal there. At the gym, I accidentally left my phone unlocked on the counter while her infamous selfie was open. At a family barbecue, I told a light-hearted story about Ashley's yoga retreat that turned out to be a weekend at the Marriott. Always calm. Always casual. Never gossip. Just facts, dropped like breadcrumbs. The thing about truth is, it spreads faster than lies once it finds oxygen. And Ashley's carefully crafted, resilient woman act couldn't withstand the weight of receipts. By the end of the month, she was a pariah. Her old friends avoided her. Chase stopped posting her entirely. probably realizing she was more liability than prize. Even her Pilates circle, the same women who once worshipped her Range Rover and Instagram filters, quietly unfollowed her. Ashley had always said, "Perception is reality." She wasn't wrong. She just never considered what happened when the perception turned against her. The last time I saw her try to stage a comeback was at Linda's birthday party. Linda had been one of her allies once, back when wine nights were about mocking their husbands and posting girls' trip photos. But Linda invited me, not her. And when Ashley showed up uninvited, every eye in the room turned cold. She strutted in, tried to smile, tried to joke. "Well, isn't this awkward?" I looked at her, calm, steady, and said just loud enough for the room to hear. "Not for me." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Ashley's face flushed, her smile cracked, and for the first time, she looked small. She left 5 minutes later, muttering something about fake friends. When I got home that night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat on the porch. The air was cool, the street quiet. I thought about all the years I'd spent in the shadow of her demands, her arrogance, her endless hunger for more. And now, she had nothing. No money, no reputation, no chase, just the hollow echo of her own choices. Revenge, I realized, isn't about the grand finale. It's about erosion. It's about watching the empire collapse one brick at a time until the queen herself is left standing in dust. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to throw a punch. I didn't need to burn the house down. All I had to do was stand still. Because in the end, Ashley destroyed herself. And I just made sure there was an audience. Ashley wasn't finished. People like her never are. They don't fade away. They flail. And her final flail came in the form of a lawsuit. One afternoon, Marcus called me. "You're not gonna like this," he said. "She's filing for defamation. Claims you ruined her reputation by spreading lies." I laughed so hard he had to pause. "Lies?" I said. "Marcus, I've got more evidence than a true crime documentary. If she wants this fight, I'll hand the judge a highlight reel." We filed our response. Page after page of hard proof. Screenshots, receipts, even the voice memos she sent to Chase. Marcus didn't even look tired. He looked amused. At the first hearing, her new lawyer, a kid who looked like he was fresh out of law school, stood up and tried to paint her as a victim of my malicious campaign. When it was our turn, Marcus dropped the folder on the desk. The sound echoed like a gavel. "Your Honor," he said, calm as ever, "my client doesn't spread lies. He keeps records." And the petitioner seems to forget that truth is an absolute defense against defamation. The judge skimmed a few pages. He frowned. Then he dismissed the case with one sentence. "Mrs. Hale, this courtroom will not be weaponized to conceal your misconduct." Her jaw dropped. Mine didn't move. After that humiliation, Ashley disappeared for a while. Weeks went by with no sightings, no posts, no desperate late-night calls. I almost thought maybe she'd finally accepted defeat. Then came the letter. Handwritten, shaky script, slipped under my front door one Friday night. "Logan, I made mistakes. I don't expect forgiveness, but I can't live like this. I lost everything. Chase is gone. My job's gone. Even Mom won't talk to me. Please, just coffee. Just one conversation. I need you." I read it twice. Folded it neatly. Slid it into the drawer with all the other evidence. Because here's the thing. Apologies mean nothing when they're born from consequences, not conscience. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted losing. And I wasn't about to throw her a lifeline when she'd spent years lighting fires on the raft. The next morning, I mailed the letter back to her mother. No note. Just the letter. Let her family see the performance for what it was. One last act of desperation. Why now? My life had settled into something solid again. Work was good. I was sleeping through the night. My house, once a stage for her charades, felt like a home again. But then came the twist. The one thing I hadn't planned for. Ashley showed up at my door. Not dressed up. Not smirking. Just hollow. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back. A cheap coat she never would have worn in the old days. "Logan," she whispered. "I've got nowhere to go." I looked at her. Really looked. For the first time in 15 years, there was no arrogance, no performance. Just a woman stripped of every illusion she'd built. I opened the door wider, not to let her in, but to make my words clear. "You once called me boring, Ashley. Predictable. A placeholder. And maybe I am. But boring men don't leave their wives hungry. Predictable men don't cheat. Placeholders don't win. Her lip trembled. Please. I shook my head. No. You made your choice. Now live with it. And I closed the door. Slowly. Quietly. No slam. Just finality. You probably expect me to say that was the end. That I rode off into the sunset. Free at last. But life doesn't always give you clean endings. Sometimes, the end sneaks up sideways. 2 months later, I got a call from Marcus. She signed it, he said. Full settlement. No alimony. No property claims. You're free. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there for a long time. Free. A word I hadn't tasted in years. That night, I walked into the office, opened the drawer, and pulled out the oak box I'd carved long ago. The one I once thought I'd gift her for our anniversary. It had held evidence. Proof. Revenge. Now, it was empty again. I carried it out to the porch, lit a match, and set the contents ablaze. Every receipt, every screenshot, every reminder of her betrayal. Watched the fire eat it all until only ash remained. Because revenge isn't complete when your enemy falls. It's complete when you no longer need to remember why you wanted them to. As the flames died, I whispered one last thing into the night. Checkmate. And for the first time in years, I laughed. Not bitter. Not broken. Just free.